everybody, and welcome to Generally Speaking, the podcast that bridges the worlds of pop culture and personal development. I'm your host, Jennifer Snook. I am so happy to be here with you today. I hope everything has been going well in your world. Here is what's been happening in mine. So I've been on a hunt for a new car, you guys, and it has been quite the journey. I think I have it narrowed down. I started with about 5 cars that I was looking at, and I've whittled it down, and I think I have narrowed it down to a Prius. I'm pretty sure that I'm getting a 2024 Prius, but it was so funny, you guys, going to all of those different car lots. I mean, some of them, I had the most out-of-body experience on a couple. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I'm so used to going to a car lot and people just descend on you. I went to a couple where it was like, it felt like, I don't know, a funeral home. Like you had to go looking for people to help you. And it was just eerie and quiet. And I'm like, is anyone selling cars around here? But then when I finally did find some guy, even he was like just so spacey. And I'd ask about a car, and no, we can't drive that one. And then I'd say, well, can we drive that one? Let me go get the keys. And then he would like disappear for 20 minutes. And the whole thing was just so like Twilight Zone, honestly. But luckily, the Toyota dealerships were not like that. The other ones I was looking at, truthfully, were Honda. I went to a couple Honda dealerships, you guys, and it was a trip. So let's move in, you guys, to all the other stuff that's going on. Jim Bellino was recently on a podcast. And also, did you hear that Jim Bellino is going out with Elizabeth Vargas, the same woman whose house Gina sold in the desert? She was on Orange County for a season. He clearly has a thing for Orange County women too, but they are like officially, well, we don't know if they're officially together, but they're officially dating. So there's that. Anyway, when Jim was on this podcast, you guys, they asked him about Alexis and John and just how the whole season has been shaking out. And I thought it was so interesting because he made a couple comments that were really kind of telling. He asked out loud, he goes, yeah, like I'm really curious about what John does for a living too. So it's kind of curious, right? Like, how does Jim Bellino not know what John does for a living if John's supposedly about to marry his ex-wife? And then he went on to say that regarding, do you remember on Watch What Happens Live when Andy asked Alexis if she'd be willing to sign a prenup? And Jim Bellino said, I'm not sure why Andy's asking Alexis if she'd sign a prenup, because I'm pretty sure that she needs to be asking that question to John. John needs to be the one that's willing to sign a prenup, because I really think that Alexis needs to be the one that's protecting her assets. So, it kind of makes sense. If John is so money hungry right now that he's going after Shannon for that $75,000, he clearly does not have the funds that he has always pretended like he has. We'll see if he has more to say on that as this wedding approaches. Oh, and Frank and Britney, you guys, did you hear? Frank and Britney from New Jersey had to cancel their long-awaited wedding. Poor Britney, it took her so long to get engaged, and then she finally sets a wedding date and it gets called off. But hopefully next time they'll plan it outside of hurricane season. Katie Maloney has a new man, you guys. I'm sure you've heard. His name is Nick Martin. But now a woman named Brandy, who apparently dated Nick Martin just a while back, has come forward and has nothing nice to say about him, nothing nice to say at all. But, Katie beats to her own drum, so I'm sure she'll, she's not going to listen to whatever she has to say. You got to find that shit out for yourself. Speaking of Katie Maloney, I meant to tell you guys this last week, but for some reason it slipped my mind. I woke up on the couch the other night, last week actually, and I woke up to a movie. Do you ever you fall asleep and you're watching one thing and then you wake up and something else is on? Well, I wake up and I'm watching something and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was kind of like a cheesy movie, you know what I mean? Like a straight to TV movie. But all of a sudden, as I'm watching this movie, Tom Sandoval pops up on scene, and he's clearly a character in this movie. And what was so shocking, you guys, was that, sorry, I had to check my hair. What was so shocking was that Tom Sandoval was like the best part of this movie. And not because it was Tom Sandoval, but just the quality of his acting was so surprisingly good. I could not get over it. I was like, he really, I mean, he would be perfect. He's like the perfect soap actor. I don't understand why he hasn't landed like at least a soap role, because he was actually really good. Now, granted, he played a character that was similar-ish to himself, so maybe it wasn't too much of a stretch. So maybe, he's not going to get an Oscar anytime soon, but for that vibe that he was playing, he played it perfectly. He just honestly, I was impressed with Tom Sandoval's acting skills. Speaking of acting skills, do you know who is such an actress and just not a good one? Vicki Gunvalson. I mean, that woman, every time she opens her mouth, she is playing a part. She doesn't know who in God's name she really is. She likes to present herself as one thing, and it's not who she is at all. I mean, have you guys listened to her new podcast? It's the one with that weird name. It's like my friend, my lover, my co-star, my arch enemy. I don't know what the name is, but it's got three different things. She hosts it with that guy who was apparently a super fan of hers at some point. Anyway, this week they had Jen Aydin on, and I have to say it was a pretty good episode just because the two of them just really showed their true colors, like Vicky and her. Vicky, if Vicky ever wants to have any relationship with Tamara again, which like, here's what I keep thinking with the whole Vicky and Tamara thing. Say something happens, God forbid something happens to Tamara tomorrow, she gets struck by lightning or whatever. What's Vicky gonna do? What's Vicky gonna do then? Is she gonna keep playing this, oh, I hate Tamara, she's such a horrible person? Or is she gonna look back on the good parts of Tamara and be like, she calls herself a Christian, but I don't think anyone that is such a Christian just talks such mad shit about someone constantly and says such mean things about someone that they once claimed to love, right? It's just not. If you really ever loved someone like you said you do, like you said you did, you don't sit there and disparage them and say all of these vicious, mean things about them. If you guys don't rock with each other anymore, that's okay. You don't need to take someone down in the press and try to make them, look like some horrible human. I mean, the things that Vicky is saying about Tamara and this whole, when Tamara talked about the fact that she went to that therapist and the therapist suggested that she might be autistic. I don't think it's that far of a stretch for someone to be diagnosed later in life as autistic. And I think it kind of makes sense if Tamara was going to some therapy to understand why she was behaving in the way she was behaving this season, that those kind of things get uncovered. But to hear the way Vicky is talking about Tamara, I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. To hear the things that Jen Aydin was saying about her was horrible. And then Jen Aydin got into the whole situation about her, that statement that she made on IG about her coming back and the fact that then Andy addressed it. She dove into that whole thing. And according to Jen, how it all went down was that she was getting Botox at Aydin Plastic Surgery. And then, of course, she gave them a plug, but it was a good one. $10 a unit, everybody, if you're in New Jersey. I mean, you can't beat that deal. Anyway, so she was getting her Botox done and doing an IG live, and apparently was reading the comments as they were coming in. And someone says, oh, I can't wait until you're gone next season or something like this. And she turned around and just responded to that because she said that she was still in the housewife's mindset. Like she said, until someone tells me I'm not a housewife, I'm still operating under that assumption. So when they said, I'm so glad you're not coming back, she just shot back and gave them, oh, well, I am coming back. And then she talked about the fact that she was so mortified when Andy went on my buddy John Hill's podcast and said that that's not what's happening and I wish her well. She said that she texted Andy after that and tried to give him some context and explained why she responded the way she did. And she said that Andy was receptive to that and said something like, oh, I figured there must have been a good reason. But we haven't made any decisions. So just tell everyone that we spoke and no one knows anything. So that's where it stands, everybody. So that was Jen's explanation. She did not have confirmation that she was coming back. That's what we can take from all of this. Let's face it, though, she's not coming back. We all know that. She did go on to say, though, that she thinks that if anyone is brought back, that that one person should be Teresa, which is smart for her to say, right? Of course, she needs to hook her wagon to Teresa's train because she knows that if Teresa gets in, she can make a better case for Teresa going back than she can make for herself. But she knows that if Teresa does go back, that she'll be right by her side, even if she didn't get a permanent spot, even if she wasn't a cast member, she knows that Teresa would bring her in as backup. So she sat there and just, going on and on about the importance of Teresa to the franchise and that, the fans love Teresa and she has all of this history with the show and her family alone creates all of this amazing content just by being the family that they are, which to me sounded like complete bullshit. And the exact reason, like that family and all that comes with it, is the exact reason why Bravo wouldn't want anything to do with them anymore, namely because of Louis. Thank you very much. So anyway, yeah, it just made sense that she was saying what she was saying about Teresa because if Teresa has a spot, then Jen has a spot right next to her. Anyway, you guys, it is time for reality check, and we are starting in Orange County this week. I don't know if you guys noticed, but during the entire episode this week, there was a soundtrack in the back playing, and the lyric was, "This is how you make me feel. This is how you make me feel." Because isn't it true on all of these shows? That's what they all say. Well, that's how you made me feel. That's how you made me feel. Hilarious. Now they're even making it into a song. So anyway, pip, pip. The ladies are still in London this week and still reeling from all the shit that went down the night before at dinner. At breakfast the next morning, Shannon says she is over all of this shit and she doesn't owe anyone anything. She doesn't owe anyone any more explanations, especially Tamrajudge, who is on her way to the spa with Katie. And Katie just doesn't understand why Shannon always freaks out and walks away. And she wonders out loud to Tamara, I just don't get why she can't just sit and talk. And Tamara says, that's exactly why I had to walk away from her. I wanted Shannon to take accountability for what she's saying. And then Katie tells Tamara, I just don't understand how or why she's getting a facelift if she's actually having trouble paying her credit card bills. And Tamara says that Shannon lives way beyond her means and that she always has. She says she throws money around like she's a multimillionaire and she is not. Down at the pool, Jen asks Gina what happened last night and tells her that she didn't even realize that she was leaving. Gina tells her that Shannon showed her a text from Alexis from years ago that literally and specifically confirmed all the things that Shannon had been saying. You know, the text where Alexis said, we are going to be suing you and we are going to be calling our attorneys. Jen is shocked to hear it and asks if she sent the text to Tamara. And Gina says, yeah, Shannon did send the text to Tamara, but Tamara hasn't said anything to anyone about it. And I can't believe that she sits across the table from Shannon, calling her out from lying, knowing that she's actually telling the truth about that text. Jen says, I've known Tamara for a long time and she loves a receipt. So I'm sure she knew about that text. This is the kind of stuff that makes Tamara thrive. She says she probably kept it a secret because she's just such a hater on Shannon right now. Emily agrees and says that Tamara and Heather are hypercritical of every move that Shannon makes. Then Tamara says to Katie that Shannon's superpower is making people think that she's the victim. And Katie goes, well, yeah, it works because I feel sorry for her. Up in the penthouse, Shannon and Emily are having breakfast when Heather arrives. Heather walks in and says, I don't like the way things went down last night. I know you're upset. Let's talk. Let's fucking talk. Shannon tells Heather that she's blown away by what she said last night. She says that she thought that they were building trust. And when they were in Sonoma, she thought she had made it very, very clear that their conversation was meant to stay between the two of them. Then Heather tells us what we didn't know until now. And that was that all that information that Shannon told her in Sonoma, she already knew. And she knew it because Tamara told her weeks ago. And then Heather goes on to say that this is exactly what happened last year. And then we cut to the reunion and Andy's saying, everyone has had private conversations with you about your relationship, Shannon. And then Heather says that Shannon went on a radio show and put it all out there. And so she can't be upset about it because she's the one that actually did it. But Shannon's still going on. That was a really big deal that I opened up to you. And Heather says, I understood that and I was there for you. But then when I heard you on Jeff's show and you just seemed so flippant about it, and Shannon says, if he's making untrue comments about me, then I have a right to defend myself. And then Heather says, did you ever think about maybe just paying him and then it can all just like die away? And Shannon says, you know what? You know what? I'm going to get him. And she gets up and starts to walk away. And they both go, get what? And she goes, my papers. And then Heather starts cracking up and she looks at Emily and she goes, she's going to get her papers. Reminds me of my mother. My mother has a lot of papers. And then Shannon comes back from the other room and she has a fistful of written receipts. And then she starts reading her receipts. Airfare, $13,000. Family dinner, $600. New shoes, $400. And meanwhile, Emily and Heather are cracking up. And I mean cracking up because it was damn funny. I mean, I even heard Heather snort. And she says, all of that totaling $60,891.40. And I'm glad you two find humor in that. Emily asks her if she's ever heard of Excel, and Heather says, you can't take those papers into court. And Emily says, well, actually, you could. Back at the pool, Jen says to Gina, did you hear Heather last night when she said that she felt used? And Gina says, yeah, used? I'm not even sure what that had to do with her. And both of them are completely baffled. And that's where we learn that before the mammograms even happened, Heather sent a text to the girls saying that she had a lot of breast cancer in her family and she didn't want to discuss her family's history on camera. So in their minds, they were being respectful by not asking Heather any questions on camera. Gina says, I'm really not sure what's up with her. Then Gina says, I've also heard that she had a lot to say about that dress you wore to the tea party. Apparently she was in Neiman Marcus and saw your dress and then called up Tamara to report on the ticket price. And the two of them were wondering why you'd be spending $2,000 on a dress if you're having financial difficulties. And Jen goes, that's bullshit. But is it bullshit? I think it's a natural question to ask. Then they cut back to Tamara asking Katie if she knew that that dress that Jen wore to the tea party was Dolce & Gabbana and cost $2,000. And Katie says, actually, yeah, she called me the morning of the event, kind of stressing out about how expensive it was and wondering if she should return it. But then she goes on to tell Tamara that she thinks that ultimately Ryan was the one that convinced her to keep it. Tamara says that she's concerned about her because she's a single mom, and if things don't work out with Ryan, then what? And then Tamara says, and with everything that's going on with the FBI, I feel like there might already be some kinks. And Katie goes, yeah, what's going on with that? And Tamara goes, oh, I shouldn't have said anything. But his business partner is a bookie. And we would constantly see the two of them going with him to the Bahamas or Vegas in private planes. And Katie speaks up and says, well, my God, she's actually going to the Bahamas right after this. Back at the pool, Jen tells Gina that Tamara has no capability of being an actual friend. And if the rest of you don't think that she's running her mouth about you the way she is about me, you're wrong. Then Jen says that all Tamara does is attack her and her family, and she feels like an idiot for giving Tamara so many chances to screw her over. And then she wonders out loud, at what point am I the idiot? Then the Duchess of Corona Del Mar gathers her ladies in waiting for a double-decker bus ride, complete with crowns and robes and all things royal. And while they're on the bus, they can't hear what the tour guide is saying. So Gina pipes up and starts talking. And Gina says, well, if we can't hear him, I'll try and say something interesting. So Heather, I went to bed last night upset because that whole mammogram thing from yesterday, I just don't get it. And Heather says, what don't you get? And Gina says, obviously, I felt really bad for how you felt in that moment. But like before we even went there, you texted us saying that you didn't want to talk about it. And Heather says, I can't discuss my family history because that's their personal information, but I was very happy discussing mine. And Shannon piped up and says, listen, we all feel really horrible about it, but we assumed that everything was fine because if it wasn't, then we would have heard. Plus, we heard all that cheering coming from your room. And Heather says, listen, we could keep couching this about what I texted you or how you feel about it, but 4 girls were sitting in a room and not one of you turned to me, and nothing changes that moment. And then Gina says, and that one moment was that much for you that you held on to it and brought it up at dinner? And Heather says, oh my God, you're bringing it up right now. I was done with it last night. And Gina says, well, I was affected by it. And then Heather goes, well, that's your problem. And then Gina says, and I don't understand how it's now coming back to me in a way that's like, I wasn't being a good friend to you. And then Heather asks if she was trying to be a good friend when Katie was coming for her. And then Gina brings up what Heather did to her before that when she was on Watch What Happens Live. And now the whole bus is stressed out. Then half the women hop off the double-decker and go for what the English call chips, what we call French fries. Meanwhile, Tamara and Heather and Katie go to sample some chocolates, the Queen's chocolates. And then Gina makes her way over to a men's grooming supply store so she can buy a gift for Travis, you know, her boyfriend, the one she claims to be broken up with. The one who, according to Gina, has very big balls and a very little willy. Then Shannon, Emily, and Jen go and take an old-timey picture. Emily gets the corset because she's the sexy one. Gina is the maiden, Shannon is the queen, and Jen is the king. The four of them are talking shit about Tamara and Heather, and then Gina and Jen tell Shannon and Emily how Heather saw Jen's dress at Neiman's and tattled to Tamara about the price tag. And Shannon is very annoyed by that news. Now we're at dinner and all the women order all fillets, one Dover sole, plus onion rings, a lot of onion rings. Gina gives a gratitude toast to Shannon, and then Shannon tells the ladies all about what her daughters are doing in London, shopping. She said that her ex-husband, their dad, gave them a little money to go shopping. And I was just wondering, what does a little money mean to them? You know what I mean? Like, how much does David Beador give his two teenage daughters to go shopping in London? Like, what is it? Like, is it $500? Is it $1,000? Is it $5,000 each? Drop your guess in the comments, you guys. I'm curious to see what you think. Then Jen turns to Heather and says, hey, Heather, I have a question for you. Was my dress at the tea party a problem for you? And Heather says, no, it was beautiful. And Jen says, did you call Tamara to talk about the price of my dress? And Heather says, I was at Neiman's and I saw your dress. And Jen goes, and said what? And Heather responds, oh my God, did she buy a $2,000 dress? Jen says, why? And Heather responds with, because you just told us that you were only getting $6,000 a month and I was worried about you. And then in confessional, Gina says, ooh, she just got caught. She just got caught big time in a big way. But is it in a big way? Because I just kind of think that that level of messiness is the right level of messiness for housewives, right? I mean, it's only natural if someone's telling you that they're having these repeated financial problems and dire financial problems, that if you see they're buying a $2,000 dress, that you'd say something about it, right? I mean, that's not dark, diabolical shit. That's just right at the messy housewives level. That is like prime time housewife shit. And if you're not expecting that amount of messiness, then you shouldn't be on that show. Then Tamara pipes up and says, Heather was actually looking out for you because she was saying that she didn't want you to feel like you have to spend more money than you have just to keep up with us and to keep up with the labels and all that stuff. And then Jen says, oh, keeping up with the labels. That's what I tried to do last year and I got shit for that too. And then they cut back to a scene where Tamara was trashing her for wearing all these fake labels. And then Jen looks at Heather and says, well, you walk in wearing designer from head to toe every day. And Tamara goes, yeah, that's because she can afford it. And Jen goes, so what? And I'm like, so what? She doesn't understand the difference. So let's break it down. Here's a word to the not so wise. Number one, don't buy labels that you can't afford. And two, don't buy fake labels. Both are gross. And how about this? Fuck labels, period. Buy what you like, wear what you like because you like it, not because of the label. After a bunch of back and forth, Heather gives Jen a full-throated apology. And then Jen turns to Tamara and says, and I don't know where to go with you. And Tamara says, I thought we were doing good. Then Jen says, well, then what happened at Katie's? And Tamara says, that was between me and Ryan. And then Jen says, Ryan has nothing to do with that business. But I really feel like within this friend group, you want to make sure all the women know that I have a real piece of shit boyfriend. And honestly, Tamara, that really hurts me. He's my partner. And then Shannon speaks up and says, well, I have a question for you, Tamara. I talked to Gina about that text that I found from 2018. The one from Alexis that said we and our. And I was surprised that I sent that to you and you didn't tell anyone in the group, like, wow, Alexis really did say that stuff. And she really did start that suit. And Tamara says, well, that's between you and her. And then Emily speaks up and calls bullshit on that and says that she does not understand why Tamara and Heather both give Alexis a pass on everything. Meanwhile, they're holding Shannon's feet to the fire about everything. And then Shannon tells Tamara, you seem to only want to say bad things about me, so please just stop talking about me. And Tamara goes, great, well then can you stop talking about me? And Shannon goes, did I say that you have a big ego? Yes, I did, because you do. And Tamara responds with, well, I'm not the person who has such a big ego that won't pay $75,000 because I don't want to look bad. Shannon says, you know what? You're just cruel. And then Tamara says, oh, shut up, and gives her the hand. She just goes, shut up. And then Shannon starts to say more, and Tamara gives her the hand again and again and again. Shannon says, don't you give me your hand. And Tamara says, I'm done with you. That's what I'm saying. I'm done. Bye. And Shannon says, maybe you buy. This is my trip. And she stands up and storms off to the bathroom. And Emily says, what, is she buying? Everybody says, Shannon, don't leave, don't leave. And Shannon snaps back, I'm just going to the bathroom. Then we cut to Shannon in confessional, who says, I don't know what Tamara's motivations are, but I am for certain that the one thing that her plan is to ruin this trip. And so far, she's batting 100. Is that what they call it? Anyway, so far she can check off that box. And then back at the table, Heather turns to Tamara and says, this might be an inappropriate time, but this is the best onion ring I've ever tasted. After dinner, the ladies all migrate to the bar where Emily proposes that they all send their men a racy text so that they can then compare their respective responses, which of course leaves Shannon feeling very left out. So she tells the group that she's tired and she wants to go to bed. A while later, the rest of them all head back to the room and do some doorbell ditching along the way. They wrap up the night with some late night girls fun. And in the morning when they wake, Shannon and Gina head over to Jen's, where Shannon, with vengeance in her eyes, decides to tell her about some very special text that she found in her phone from Tamara about Jen. Meanwhile, Emily is out getting a juice with Tamara and trying to talk some empathy into her. Back in the room, Shannon says she wants Jen to understand how Tamara works behind everyone's back. Shannon said that someone texted Tamara some information about Ryan. She shows Jen the text and says, someone texted her some stuff about Ryan. And she said that she was going to ask her friend's husband to do a background check. And then she sent me this evidence of the background check. Meanwhile, Jen is shocked and pissed and says Tamara has no soul. Gina's with them and she says that it's weird and creepy and scary, like going to dinner with a bomb. Jen is heated, and I mean fired up. She says, what does she want to do? Like come in and ruin my family? She calls Tamara trash. She says she is trash. She is literally just fucking trash. And then she says bye to Shannon and Gina, and she storms up to Tamara's room with the production crew in tow. Jen walks in while Tamara's getting her hair blown out, and it's obviously loud because of the hair dryer, and Jen asks if they can turn that off. And as soon as they do, Jen says, did you do a background check on Ryan? And Tamara says, no. What are you talking about? And Jen says, you did. And Tamara says, not on my kid's life. And then Jen just starts going balls to the wall at Tamara, who then starts clapping at her. And Jen says, you want to talk about my fake shit, about my dresses? You're throwing around the FBI? Tamara starts clapping again and says, that's not what happened, but I'm proud of you for finding your voice. This was 2 years ago, and it wasn't even a background check. And then she pulls a Vicki and says, I've never paid for a background check in my life. She says he wasn't a private investigator. He was a real estate guy. And Jen says, what do you care? What does Eddie do? What does Eddie do, Tamara? And Tamara goes, well, he runs a very successful multi-million-dollar business. And then Jen goes, well, what do I give a shit what he does? Is he happy? And I guess her implication is that if everyone's happy, then why can't you just leave them alone? Like as if the rest of the women are supposed to look away as long as her and Ryan are happy, like regardless of how he gets her money. Well, is he happy? Yeah, but is that enough? Then in confessional, Heather says, wow, I didn't even know Jen could speak that loudly. It was sort of impressive. Tamara tells Jen, you told me that he was a mortgage broker. So I asked my friend if he really was a licensed mortgage broker. And he said, no, that was it. Then in confessional, Tamara says, don't make it out like I'm hiring PIs because that's not what I did. Shannon is just in there trying to rile her up and get her to come after me. But God, if you're going to send someone after me, at least send someone with half a brain. And I'm not saying that Jen is dumb, but she's definitely blind, and it makes her sound dumb when she says things like, what does Eddie do? It's It's like she doesn't understand the difference. Jen keeps screaming at Tamara that she's so over her low-level bullshit and that it's weird and that she's obsessed. And Tamara says, Jen, it's all over the internet. And then Jen turns to Heather and says, and I hope you know the only reason why she's friends with you is because she's standing in front of you. Then Jen turns to Tamara and says, I'm a better fucking friend than you could ever be, Tamara. Bye. Tamara says, bye. And Jen walks out. And then walks back in and says, no, you need to fucking grow up and leave my family alone. I just moved into that man's house. My kids are good. My kids are with me and good and happy. Leave me the fuck alone. I want no part of your bullshit. You talk about everybody behind their back. And then she walks out of the room and screams, you fucking bitch. And Heather says, well, that was a lot. And it was a lot. And we will see where we go from here. But apparently, everything is copacetic in the OC now after that reunion. Apparently, all's well that ends well, and that ended well. So we will see. Okay, everybody, now bundle up because we're heading over to Salt Lake City. But before we do, if you're watching this, you guys, on YouTube, please make sure you reach out and smash that subscribe button right now. If you're listening on your favorite streaming platform, please make sure you go ahead and hit that follow button. Thank you very much. So on Salt Lake City, you guys, this week, it was good. It was so good. The show opens with Lisa and Bronwyn meeting up. This was wild. The episode opens with Lisa and Bronwyn meeting up to go over everything that has transpired since they were sitting in that airport waiting for their connecting flight. So as they were sitting there, Lisa had made a comment to Bronwyn about how much she looked like her daughter Gwen. And Bronwyn goes, oh gosh, that's crazy because everybody always says that she looks exactly like her dad. So she whips out a picture of her daughter's dad and she shows Lisa. And Lisa suddenly realizes that she knows Gwen's dad. And not only does she know Gwen's dad, but she knows Gwen's dad's entire family. And she's known them well for a very long time. And so Lisa is just spun by this information and spun by the fact that she has known Bronwyn and Gwen for so long and has never made this connection. So the ladies go to a spa and they sit down and she gives Lisa the rundown on how it all happened. She tells her that Gwen is about to be 18 years old, that it's just really a sad situation because her dad is dead and she still doesn't know any part of her dad's family. And Bronwyn, you can just see, is super bothered by it. You can tell that this is has been a huge part of her life, carrying around the weight of this. And Lisa goes on to tell her that after she realized the connection, that she reached out to who would be Gwen's grandmother, to the father's mother. And Lisa says that after realizing all of this information in the airport, that she went to Gwen's dad's family and told them about this connection. Bronwyn says that it's really important for her to have a relationship with that side of her family, but that it will physically pain her to watch her daughter be close to them. Then Heather, Whitney, and Britney hit the slopes, and when they take a break, Britney pulls out her phone and shows them both a video of all the gifts that she came home to from Jared, Mr. Cheeseball Osmond. He has sent her 4 dozen roses from her favorite florist, a card, and a stuffed unicorn. This call, you guys, that call was from a car dealership because that's the problem. You go to a few car dealerships and all they do is call you. It's my phone has been ringing off the hook. So he got her 4 dozen roses, wrote her out a big card, got her a stuffed unicorn, and told her that he wants to meet up with her. He really wants to meet up with her. So Britney tells the girls she thinks she owes it to him to meet up with her, especially after all those snarky texts that Lisa sent. Britney now says that she's bothered by Lisa's actions, and she thinks that Lisa is way too invested in her life. And Whitney says, me too. I actually got a call from the guy at the hotel, and he told me that they found a Prism jewelry box in the garbage in Lisa's room. Whitney says, I was going hard for Meredith that night. Like, why are you coming for my business? But then Heather interjects and says, but it was actually Lisa that told Meredith. Lisa told Meredith, Meredith told me, and I told you. And so now Whitney is positive that Lisa, not Meredith, is behind all of those rumors, all of the rumors and the nastiness that are swirling around about Prism. Then we're at Mary's house and we see her obviously impaired son. And it's clear that Mary is very stressed about the way he's living his life. Mary says right now he's not in a good space to be working and that it has a lot to do with his lifestyle. And that is very clear. Mary and him have a conversation. He asks for money for food. And once he goes back in his room and closes the door, Mary says, "Bless him, Lord." Then Angie goes to pick up Mary for a hip hop dance class. It's there that we see Heather's daughter. Speaking of Heather, she's meeting up with Lisa over in a salt cave. And after the dance class, Angie tells Mary about how upset she is with Lisa. She says that they used to be like sisters, but Lisa's become impossible, and now she can understand why Lisa can't maintain any friendships. Back in the salt caves, Heather is telling Lisa that she doesn't like the way Angie is treating her. Angie's bringing up Lisa's parenting or lack thereof, and it really hurts Lisa's feelings. Then Whitney and her husband drop their daughter off at soccer practice, and that's when we learn that if your house has a view of a temple, then you have a higher property value. And I mean, good to know if you're going to move to Utah anytime soon, guys. While Whitney and Justin are driving, she takes a call from a podcaster who has a little info about who's actually been talking trash about Prism. And it is indeed someone in her inner circle, he says. Someone with a tequila brand. A little someone named Lisa, which just confirmed everything that Whitney was thinking since she got that information from Heather while they were on the slopes. And then it's time for the big meetup between Britney and Jared Cheeseball Osmond. They meet up at a restaurant. He's already there waiting for her. She walks in and says, "Hi, how are you?" And he says, "Can I have a hug?" She says, yeah, you can have a hug. So they hug and she says, "How are you?" And he goes, "Great. How are you?" And she says, "Nervous." He goes, "Nervous? Do I make you nervous?" "Do you make me nervous?" "No, Jared, you make me want to barf." Anyway, Britney says she knows that Jared can be very convincing, even manipulative, which it's very obvious. She says she has a really hard time resisting him, but she feels like she owes him some time because he's been asking for some closure. They tread into talking about their relationship, and he's babbling on about how he was so excited to be getting a FaceTime from her while she was away, but then so disappointed to find Lisa Barlow on the line bad-mouthing him and singing about them being besties. Jared says, "Here's the problem. Conversations between people that love each other are private," which is basically just code for him telling her, "I don't want you sharing with people about what a shitty boyfriend I am." He says their relationship should be private. And she says, "Well, I don't want it to be private. I just want it to be how we are to everybody." He says that when we're out, I hold your hand. When we're together, I've kissed you in public. I've kissed you in public. She says, "Do you take any accountability for me not feeling safe?" And he says, "Feeling safe?" And then to camera, Britney says, "He doesn't ever post about me on social media. He won't get off dating apps. And when we walk by cute girls, he'll drop my hand." He'll drop her hand, you guys. I mean, why is she even still talking to this geek? And then he says, "I've shown up for you every day, Britney, and it's not enough. I've given you everything that I can. There it is. I'm a really good guy, Britney. I'm a really good guy. It's okay." And at this point, the douchebaggery is just too much for me. I mean, it is disgusting. This guy is too much. Then he says, "I don't want to lose this relationship, but we just don't understand each other. So let's just put a pin in it." Put a pin in it. Put a pin in what? And poor desperate Britney goes, "Okay." And then we're with Bronwyn and Gwen, who sit down and have a conversation about everything that went down at that airport regarding, Lisa and Bronwyn and the conversation that revealed all of this stuff. And Gwen is a gorgeous, thoughtful, bright girl who just beautifully articulates her feelings about the whole situation. She really wants a relationship with her dad's family, but she's leery after getting a text from her grandmother who said that they're really looking forward to meeting Gwen, but only if she's in a place where she's willing to accept them. And I have to say, Bronwyn handled this whole thing so beautifully that after that, I am like an official fan. I'm an official fan of Bronwyn, not of her fashion, but I'm definitely a fan of hers. Then Heather, Britney, Lisa, and Mary get together to go ziplining, and we find out that ziplining is Mary Cosby's favorite. I'm telling you, this woman doesn't stop surprising me this season. And after they're done ziplining, they whip out a little food for a little tailgate, and it's there where Heather gifts Britney a unicorn jewelry dish to remind her of her strength during this whole debacle with Jared, the Joker. Heather tells the girls about how he was trying to woo Britney once they got back from Milwaukee. And then she asked Britney how that closure meeting went. And Lisa goes, wait, did you guys meet up to break up? And Britney starts in with, I'm a little upset about it, actually. And Lisa says, upset about what? And Britney says, I'm upset with you, Lisa. Lisa goes, me? Yeah, because you grabbed my phone and you text him and you FaceTimed him and you caused a rift. I don't understand why you're so invested in my relationship. I mean, you were so mean to him. And Lisa says, I caused a huge rift. What are you talking about? Why would you be upset with me? And she says, because you were so mean to him. And Lisa says, well, he deserved it. He deserved it. He's manipulating you. You're not even his girlfriend. And Britney says, he's just private. And Lisa says, he's not private. He's somebody that I would run from. Then that poor, pathetic Britney says, Lisa, I just want to be in a good space with him where at least we can be friends. And what you did may have ruined it forever. Forever. Lisa in confessional says, I'm confused. In Milwaukee, she was thanking me and now she's blaming me. Thank God I took her phone or she'd still be in that horrible relationship. Then they cut back to Britney saying, stay out of it. It's none of y'all's business. And then Mary Cosby, as only Mary Cosby can do, says, leave us out of it because you're wasting a lot of time about this. He says back, I will 100% leave you out of this, Mary. And Mary says, good, thank you so much. Then Heather raises her hand and says, leave me out of this too. And Lisa says, leave me out of this too. Then Heather brings up the fact that Mary saw her daughter, Georgia. She says, yeah, I did. And the other two say, how did you see Georgia? Mary says, the wind blew her to me and I blew it back. Everyone's confused. And then Heather tells them that it was actually a dance class. Britney and Lisa wonder why she's being so secretive. And then Mary says, well, I was with Angie. And Lisa says, oh, fun. I haven't talked to her since Milwaukee. And Mary says, why? Lisa says, because in Milwaukee, she wasn't being a good friend. And she's telling people that I'm a bad mom and there's just no coming back from that. And Mary says, well, did you tell her that? And then Mary turns to Heather and says, and I feel like you're championing Lisa. And Heather says, well, I am. And Mary says, but you've been knowing Angie longer than any of us. Heather says, I champion Angie too, but in this instance, I'm on Lisa's side. Heather says, I think she's taken Lisa for granted and she's in this mode where she wants to change the terms of their friendship and she hasn't even informed Lisa. Mary says, I feel like you're being two-faced. And Heather says, I'm not. I would really say any of this to Angie's face. Mary says, I feel like you leave a trail of lies, like the eye, like the fact that you champion body positivity, and now that's a lie too. And Lisa pipes up and says, she said that body positivity was a lie. And then Heather clarifies herself and says, it wasn't even about me. I'm saying that people say they champion people with different bodies, but the truth is they champion people with beautiful bodies. And the real truth is that they just want you to be skinny. The entire world is criticizing the way I'm losing weight or not losing weight. I don't need it from you too, Mary. I'm just trying to live my goddamn life and not have it be about my body for once. And then Mary says, I'm not trying to hurt you, Heather. And Heather says, I know you're not, but it's frustrating. And we really need to figure this out because we're clearly at an impasse. And impasse or not, if Mary Cosby is involved in it, I will be tuning in because that woman is TV gold. She is officially my favorite, maybe across all the shows. She is the most entertaining, especially this year. Anyway, you guys, that about does it for this episode of Generally Speaking. If you've been watching us on YouTube, please make sure you reach out and smash that subscribe button. Leave us a comment, leave us a 5-star rating. We would love that. Tell your family, tell your friends. If you've been listening on your favorite streaming platform, please make sure you hit that follow button. If you'd like to follow me on socials, you can find me on TikTok at This Is Generally Speaking or on Instagram at The Jennifer Snook. If you'd like to collaborate or have a question you'd like answered on the pod, you can email me at jennifer@jennifersnook.com. And if you'd like to get your hands on any of this adorable Generally Speaking merch, I will be sure to leave that link down below. All right, you guys, I've loved spending this time with you. Thank you so much for being here. And until we are together again, everybody, stay rooted in love. See you next time, everybody.